When Amanda's beloved grandmother passes, she inherits more than just a house, she inherits a war. As her relatives descend like vultures, contesting the will and stripping the home of memories, Amanda discovers a hidden journal, secret recordings, and a mountain of evidence left behind by the woman who knew this day would come. But the truth won't just protect Amanda, it will force her to confront the very soul of her family. In a battle of legacy versus greed, can she honor her grandmother's wishes without losing herself in the process? My name is Amanda Miller. I'm 32 years old, a hospice nurse, and until a few weeks ago, I thought my family was, if not functional, then at least tolerable. That illusion shattered the day Grandma Eleanor's will was read. It happened on a gray Monday morning in Mr. Harrison's law office, a converted brownstone with creaky floorboards and the faint smell of lemon polish. We sat in a cramped conference room that felt more like a therapist's office than a legal setting. My relatives, Uncle Philip and Judith, and my cousins Rachel and Nathan were dressed in varying shades of polite mourning. I was the only one still wearing my work scrubs, having come directly from a night shift at the hospice center. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and opened a manila folder. Eleanor Catherine Miller's final will, he began. The air grew taut, and Judith reached for Rachel's hand, and I saw Nathan glance at the closed door, as if weighing his escape. I didn't expect anything. Grandma Eleanor and I had been close Sunday phone calls, shared holidays, quiet afternoons in her garden, but I assumed her estate would be divided equally, as fairness dictated. That's how it worked in families, right? To my beloved granddaughter Amanda, Mr. Harrison read, I leave the entirety of my estate, including the house at Beacon Hill, the lake property in Vermont, all personal belongings and financial accounts. There was a long, stunned silence. What? Uncle Philip's voice cracked with disbelief. All of it? You must be mistaken, Mr. Harrison was unshaken. Mrs. Miller was very clear in her instructions. I have notarized documentation and video evidence confirming her sound mind and intent. This is absurd, and Judith snapped. Mother would never, she always said we'd share everything equally. Didn't she, Rachel? Rachel nodded slowly, but her eyes were fixed on me with something between confusion and resentment. If there are objections, Mr. Harrison continued, they can be filed with the probate court. But the legal documentation is solid. This was Mrs. Miller's final and uncoerced decision. I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I wanted to protest, to say, I didn't know. I didn't ask for this. Please don't look at me like that. But the room had already turned on me. As we filed out, and Judith hissed under her breath, you always were her little pet. Outside, the November wind bit through my thin jacket. I stood on the sidewalk staring at the rust-colored leaves tumbling along the pavement, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Grandma had left me everything. The next few days were a blur. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from family members, some pleading, some accusing. Uncle Philip left a voicemail threatening to contest the will. Nathan tagged me in a Facebook post about greed and betrayal. Even my mother, who had divorced from the family years ago, called to ask what the hell I was thinking. But the worst wasn't the anger. It was the doubt. Had I done something to influence Grandma's decision? Had I unintentionally created distance between her and the rest of the family? The thought made me nauseous. One night, unable to sleep, I pulled out an old photo album Grandma had given me on my 25th birthday. Inside were pictures of summer trips to the lake house, holiday dinners, and snapshots of me reading to her in the sunroom. Tucked in the back was a letter in her elegant cursive. My dearest Amanda, if you're reading this, I'm probably gone, and I hope you're holding this with dry eyes and a steady heart. I've watched you grow into a woman of kindness and strength, someone who gives without keeping score. I want you to have this home because you understand what makes it valuable, not its market price, but its memories. Don't let the others make you feel guilty for loving me well. With all my love, Grandma Eleanor. The guilt didn't vanish, but it shifted. I hadn't manipulated anyone. I'd simply shown up for phone calls, for visits, for the quiet things no one else had time for. Still, I braced for a fight. 2 weeks later, I received formal notice. Uncle Philip had filed a petition to contest the will, citing undue influence and diminished capacity. He had hired a law firm with a reputation for aggressive litigation. I took the letter to Mr. Harrison, who read it with a sigh. "It begins," he murmured. "But don't worry, Amanda. Eleanor anticipated this. She was meticulous." He opened a locked cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope labeled, "In the event of contestation." Inside were notarized statements from doctors, video recordings of Grandma discussing her decisions, and a detailed inventory of her assets. She wanted her wishes respected, Mr. Harrison said, and she left the means to ensure that. Even so, the process was brutal. I was called greedy, manipulative, a gold digger. Anonymous notes arrived in my mailbox. One morning, my car tires were slashed outside the hospice center. The police shrugged it off. No witnesses, no proof. I kept working, barely holding it together. My patients grounded me. Each life I helped ease from this world reminded me what truly mattered. But the stress was seeping in, eroding my confidence, stealing my peace. And then came the day when everything broke open. But the stress was taking a physical toll. I wasn't sleeping. I had constant headaches. And my supervisor at the hospice center noticed I was making small errors I never would have made before. "Amanda, is everything all right?" she asked after I forgot to document a medication change. "This isn't like you." I broke down and told her everything. She immediately insisted I take a week of personal leave. "Your patients need you at your best," she said kindly. "Take some time to get your legal affairs in order." During that week, I finally visited Grandma's house, my house now, according to the will. I used a key I'd had for years and walked into the silent, empty rooms that still smelled faintly of her perfume. But something was wrong. The house felt hollow, with conspicuous empty spaces on walls and shelves. I began to realize the extent of what had happened. The antique clock that had always stood in the hallway gone. The collection of crystal figurines Grams had treasured missing. Several pieces. Her jewelry box in the bedroom nearly empty. They had already taken so much. Not just valuable items, but things of purely sentimental value. The hand-knit Afghan Grandma's mother had made. The collection of souvenir spoons from her travels with Grandpa. Even the worn recipe book where she had penciled notes in the margins. I sank onto her bed, stripped now of the handmade quilt that should have been there, and sobbed until I had no tears left. It wasn't about the monetary value. It was the erasure of her presence, the theft of memories I had hoped to keep closed. In the back of her closet, I found a small safe I hadn't known about. After trying several combinations that might be meaningful to her, I finally used her birthday, and it opened. Inside was a leather-bound journal, several USB drives, and a note in her handwriting. "For Amanda. Use if necessary." The journal detailed everything. Every visit, every conversation, every borrowed item that was never returned. She had been documenting the family's behavior for years, creating a record that would be impossible to dispute. The USB drives contained backup copies of emails, photographs of her possessions, and even audio recordings. One entry from 6 months before her death stood out. "Philip visited today, spent 10 minutes asking about my health. Then an hour trying to convince me to streamline my estate by selling the lake property. When I refused, he became quite irritated and said I was being irrational about a depreciating asset. What he doesn't know is that I had the property appraised last month. It's worth nearly double what it was when Harold and I bought it. Philip has never understood the difference between price and value." Another entry was even more telling. "Judith brought Rachel for a casual visit today. While Judith kept me occupied in the living room, Rachel disappeared upstairs for nearly 20 minutes. After they left, I checked my jewelry box. As I suspected, my tennis bracelet is now missing. I've updated the inventory and taken photos of the space. I wonder if they realize there are cameras in the upstairs hallway now." Armed with this evidence, I contacted Mr. Harrison again. "I need to fight back," I told him. "They've already taken so much. Eleanor suspected this might happen," he said gravely. "She was very thorough in her preparations. I'll connect you with a litigation attorney who specializes in contested wills and estate theft." The attorney, Sarah Donovan, was a formidable woman in her 50s with a reputation for being relentless. She reviewed Grandma's documentation and immediately began drafting cease and desist letters to everyone who had taken items from the house. This is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen, she told me. Your grandmother was extraordinarily methodical. The legal pushback only intensified the family's campaign against me. Uncle Philip, true to his word, filed a lawsuit, contesting the will on the grounds of undue influence and lack of testamentary capacity. And Judith began calling my colleagues at the hospice center, insinuating that I had neglected patients to spend time manipulating my grandmother. The director of the center called me into her office. Amanda, I know these accusations are baseless, but they're becoming disruptive. Several families have expressed concerns after receiving calls from your aunt. My professional reputation, which I had built through years of dedicated care, was being systematically attacked. The stress became so severe that I developed insomnia and started having panic attacks. My doctor prescribed anxiety medication and strongly recommended therapy. Your physical symptoms are a direct result of this ongoing stress, she explained. This level of family conflict creates genuine trauma. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received an email from a local reporter asking for comment on the Miller family estate dispute that had divided one of Boston's oldest families. Somehow, the story had leaked to the press. That night, alone in my apartment with the curtains drawn, I hit my lowest point. I seriously considered giving up, signing over the inheritance just to make the nightmare end. I pulled out Grandma's letter again, seeking comfort in her words, when my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. Amanda, it's Maria, your grandmother's health aide. I still have some things she wanted you to have, personal things I kept safe. Can we meet? The next day, Maria handed me a small box. She made me promise to keep these separate from everything else in the house, she said. She said you'd know what to do with them when the time came. Inside the box were more memory cards and a small digital recorder. When I plugged the first card into my laptop, I found dozens of video files. Grandma is sitting in her favorite chair, talking directly to the camera. In the first video, dated nearly a year before her death, she looked directly into the lens with clear, sharp eyes. My name is Eleanor Catherine Miller. Today is September 15th, and I am recording this of my own free will with full mental capacity, as Mr. Harrison can attest. The camera panned to show Mr. Harrison sitting nearby, who nodded and stated his name and the date. I want to explain my decisions regarding my will, Grandma continued. For years, I have observed my family's behavior. I have tested their character and their motivations, and I have made my decisions accordingly. She went on to detail specific incidents, dates, and observations that had led to her decision to leave everything to me. Her voice was strong, her reasoning clear and specific. There would be no way for anyone to claim she had been confused or manipulated. As I watched video after video, I felt Grandma's presence wash over me. She hadn't just left me her possessions. She had left me the means to defend her wishes. She had known exactly what would happen and had prepared for it meticulously. In the final video, recorded just weeks before her death, she looked more frail, but her eyes were still bright with determination. Amanda, if you're watching this, then things have gotten difficult as I expected they might. Remember what I always told you about standing up for yourself. Sometimes kindness means having the courage to enforce boundaries. I didn't raise you to be a doormat, my dear. I raised you to be just like me, and I never let anyone take advantage of me. For the first time since the reading, I felt a spark of my old strength returning. Grandma had trusted me not just with her possessions, but with her legacy. I couldn't let her down. The next morning, I called Sarah Donovan. I have something you need to see, I told her, and brought over all the videos and recordings. After reviewing them, she leaned back in her chair with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. This changes everything. Your grandmother didn't just build a case, she created a fortress. With the videos in hand and Sarah's legal expertise guiding every move, we launched a coordinated response that shifted the momentum decisively in our favor. First, Sarah filed a formal inventory of all missing items with the probate court, complete with photographs, timestamps, and statements from the videos. Then, legal demands for the return of each piece were sent out, bearing a clear deadline and a warning. Failure to comply would lead to criminal charges for theft. Simultaneously, she filed a motion to dismiss Uncle Philip's lawsuit contesting the will. Each of Grandma's video declarations was submitted as supporting evidence. No judge in the Commonwealth will rule against your grandmother after seeing these, Sarah assured me. To protect my professional standing, we also contacted the hospice center's legal team. Once they reviewed the targeted harassment I had been subjected to, especially the timeline of and Judith's defamatory calls, they issued their cease and desist letters. The center stood by me, releasing a statement reaffirming their confidence in my care and commitment. Still, I knew we needed more than paperwork and court motions. We needed human testimony. I reached out to the nurses and aides who had helped care for Grandma in her final months. They responded with warmth and readiness. You were there at least twice a week, said Nurse Thompson in her affidavit. Sometimes your uncle would go a month without showing up, then spend the whole visit on his phone. Maria, Grandma's trusted aide, had kept a visitor log. Her detailed calendar showed I had visited Grandma 64 times in the last year. Uncle Philip had visited 7 times. And Judith 9. The cousins are only on holiday. As we dug deeper, the financial picture also sharpened into focus. Uncle Philip had borrowed tens of thousands from Grandma over the years, none of which had been repaid. And Judith had been charging groceries, travel expenses, even spa visits to Grandma's account under the guise of caretaking costs. This isn't just unethical, it's criminal, Sarah said flatly. We knew they'd never return everything voluntarily, so Sarah made a strategic suggestion: a family meeting at her law office. Sometimes showing your full hand at once can avoid months of unnecessary litigation, she explained. The morning of the meeting, I arrived early, nerves tightly coiled despite the mountain of evidence we had. One by one, they filed in Uncle Philip with his skittish lawyer, and Judith avoiding eye contact. Rachel and Nathan both visibly nervous. Sarah began simply, "Thank you all for coming. We've asked for this meeting to resolve some outstanding issues regarding Eleanor Miller's estate." Uncle Philip's attorney launched into a polished statement questioning the validity of the will. Sarah let him finish, then pressed a button on a remote. The screen behind her flickered to life. "My name is Eleanor Catherine Miller." Grandma's face filled the room, her voice clear, her gaze direct. The effect was immediate. Philip's jaw tensed. Judith's face went white. Rachel began to cry. "There are 17 more videos like this," Sarah said after it ended. "Each addresses specific incidents and decisions. Eleanor Miller was perhaps the most thorough client I've ever encountered." Next, Sarah displayed a spreadsheet of stolen items with documentation and their approximate value. Over 400,000. Ms. Miller is prepared to file criminal charges for theft if these items are not returned within 7 days, she said calmly. Additionally, we have documentation of financial exploitation that could be of interest to the district attorney's office, Uncle Philip's lawyer whispered furiously in his ear. Finally, Philip cleared his throat. "Perhaps we've all been hasty. Emotions run high after a loss. I couldn't resist, especially when there's money involved." The meeting adjourned with his attorney requesting time to review the evidence. 2 days later, they officially withdrew their lawsuit, and within a week, the items began trickling back. Not in person, never in person, but by courier and moving companies. The jewelry came in velvet-lined boxes, the clock carefully crated, Grandma's crystal figurines bubble-wrapped like museum pieces. I hadn't expected anyone to reach out. So when Aunt Judith called, I was stunned. "Amanda," she began awkwardly. "We didn't realize how much these years meant to Mother. You never asked," I replied. She hesitated. "We thought you were taking advantage of her. We didn't understand why she preferred your company so much, because I saw her as a person, not a balance sheet." After a pause, Judith added, "Some of us would like to talk to explain, maybe even apologize. I'm willing to listen, I said, but I need time. That evening, surrounded by the returned heirlooms, each a memory of Grandma, I realized something. I had won the legal battle, yes, but I had lost much of my family along the way. Still, I wasn't ready to burn every bridge. The next morning, I made phone calls to each of them. I offered something small but meaningful, an opportunity to select one sentimental item from Grandma's things. Not the most valuable, but something they genuinely remembered. Rachel asked for the recipe book. She taught me to make snickerdoodles once, she said. It's one of my few good memories. Nathan requested Grandpa's old tackle box. He took me fishing a few times when I was really little, before things got complicated. Aunt Judith asked for a watercolor painting of the lake Grandma had painted as a young woman. Philip declined altogether. These weren't full reconciliations, but they were seeds. As the probate court officially closed the case, naming me sole heir, I stood on the porch of Grandma's house, my house now, and whispered to the wind, "You saw us clearly, Grandma." Even when we didn't see ourselves. 6 months after the reading that changed everything, I sat quietly in Grandma Eleanor's garden, now my garden, watching bees drift lazily through the lavender bushes she had planted years ago. The storm had passed. The lawsuits were over, the items returned, and the house restored. But what lingered wasn't just a sense of victory. It was a purpose. The house had become a sanctuary again. I kept the heart of what Grandma built, her cozy nooks, floral drapes, her weathered furniture, and added small touches of my own. New bookshelves in the study, a meditation space in the sunroom. Wind chimes on the porch sing softly with the breeze. I had taken a leave of absence from the hospice center. At first, it was to recover from the insomnia, the panic attacks, the whirlwind of legal battles. But over time, it became something more. A pause to reflect, to plan, to ask myself, what now? One rainy afternoon, while organizing Grandma's desk drawers, I found an envelope I hadn't noticed before. It was labeled simply, "To Amanda, after everything is settled." Inside was a handwritten letter on Grandma's distinctive stationery. "My dearest Amanda, if you're reading this, the storm has passed. Knowing our family, it was likely a Category 5 hurricane, but I had complete faith in your strength and resilience. This inheritance was never about punishing the others, though I know that's how they'll see it. It was about recognizing the heart that beats so strongly in you. The same heart that Harold had. The same heart that your father, Robert, inherited. Money changes people, Amanda, but occasionally it finds its way to someone who understands its true purpose, to create security that allows for generosity. You were that person for me. I chose you not because you were perfect, but because when you made mistakes, you took responsibility. When you disagreed, you did so kindly, and when you helped me, it was never to gain, only to give. Please, don't let this wealth change who you are. Use it to become more of who you are. Take that trip to Italy we always talked about. Fund that pediatric hospice program you dreamed of. Keep the lake house for your future family. And when wounds have healed, if they heal, find ways to reconnect. Not because they deserve it, but because connection matters. I love you, my dear girl. I am so proud of the woman you've become, Grandma Eleanor. I wept openly as I read it, because even now, even from beyond, Grandma was guiding me. In the following months, I took her advice to heart. I established the Eleanor Miller Memorial Scholarship at my old nursing school, specifically for students entering hospice or palliative care. I started a nonprofit foundation in her name, one focused on supporting elderly individuals without families, those who didn't have an Amanda to advocate for them. I took the trip to Italy, visiting the village in Tuscany where Grandma's parents were born. Walking those cobblestone streets, I felt the quiet weight of my ancestry settle warmly into my bones. As for the rest of the family, healing came in surprising ways. Rachel was first. She reached out asking to meet. She brought her newborn daughter. I named her Eleanor, she said softly. I want her to know the real stories, not the sanitized versions from fundraisers. Would you tell her about Grandma someday? I nodded. Of course. Nathan invited me to his wedding. When I arrived, he introduced me not as a cousin, but as the one running the Eleanor Miller Foundation. It wasn't affection, exactly, but it was acknowledgement, and Judith remained distant. But that December, I received a Christmas card from her. Just one sentence. Your grandmother would be proud of what you're doing. From her, it was practically an olive branch. Uncle Philip never contacted me. Some wounds are too deep. Some people are too stubborn. I made peace with that. The greatest surprise came during a fundraising gala for the foundation. A man in his 60s approached me, tall, tan, and vaguely familiar. Lucas, he introduced himself. Your father's cousin. I moved to California years ago. Lost touch with everyone, but I never forgot Eleanor. Over dinner, he shared stories of my dad, Robert. He was the best of us, Lucas said. He chose teaching over money, integrity over ambition. Your grandma adored him for that. Looks like she found that same spirit in you. Through Lucas, I connected with a side of the family untainted by the inheritance battle. Second and third cousins I'd never met before, who brought old photos and laughter and a sense of shared history I didn't know I was missing. 1 year to the day after Grandma passed, I hosted a small memorial dinner at the house. I invited only those who had truly cared for her, Maria and the other caregivers, Mr. Harrison, a few neighbors, Lucas, and his family. Even Rachel and her baby. We lit candles, shared stories, and passed around Grandma's famous chocolate torte. It was the kind of gathering she would have loved, simple, warm, full of genuine affection. As the evening wound down, Mr. Harrison stood beside me with a glass of cherry wine, Grandma's favorite, you know. He said, I've handled hundreds of estates. I've seen families torn apart over far less. But you remained yourself. I smiled, eyes misty. Grandma always said being true to yourself was the only legacy worth defending. He nodded. She told me once that her greatest achievement wasn't her wealth. It was raising a son who valued integrity and watching that pass to you. That night, as fireflies danced in the twilight, I stood on the porch and whispered into the soft breeze. We did it, Grandma. We made things right. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure or fight for what's right in the face of betrayal? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more tales about family, legacy, and finding strength through struggle.